Hello, everyone. My name is Clayton Osler with Content Watch. I wanted to go ahead and get started with today's webinar presentation. Before I get started, first I want to apologize for the audio issues that we're experiencing. I know many of you are accustomed to logging into a webinar and just being able to listen to the audio on your computer, and I'm one of those people. So I apologize for the inconvenience of asking you to call in. I hope we can make it worth your time. In the future, we hope to get this issue resolved so that you don't have to call in and listen on the phone, that you can actually just do so on your computer. Also, to make you aware, we're going to record this webinar, so if we go over things quickly or there's information you want to share with your friends or you just want to watch it again, please look at our website. We'll actually be posting it on our website here shortly, usually within about a week of the time that we complete the demonstration. I'm going to go ahead and get started with today's presentation real quickly. I just want to make sure that everyone is logged in and seeing my screen okay. So real quickly, I'm just going to do a quick check and we'll go ahead and get started. So the topic of today's webinar is that we want to talk about what kids are hiding from their parents on the internet, how they hide it, what you can do to help protect against that. To give you an idea of the format, we're going to leave this in presentation mode. So right now I'm the only person that you'll hear. We're working on getting rid of the beep in the background if you're hearing that on people logging in and out as well. So I have to apologize for that. But when I get done, we will open it up to any questions. So if you have questions on something that we went over, please hang on to those and we'll make sure that we get them answered for you. To give you a quick introduction to who we are, my name's, like I said, Clayton Osler with Nanny. I'm the Senior Director of Technology. Nanny is a global company. We've been protecting families for over 15 years now on the Internet. We're sold in 157 countries, and we've actually protected more than 2 million families on the Internet. And it's our company mission to help keep you and your family safe while you're online. Today, obviously, I kind of start out with a little bit of a tech trend, but I found this cartoon a little bit amusing and some statistics that go along with it. But obviously, the reason why we're all here is because most of us feel a little bit overwhelmed with the Internet. Half of the parents with kids between the age of 5 and 15 feel like their kids know more about them than the Internet, and 75% of all parents with kids between the ages of 12 and 15 feel like their kids know more. So obviously it's something that we all struggle with as parents, and hopefully we can give you some information that will help keep you abreast of what's going on and help keep you and your family safe on the Internet. Really, the big challenge is that we often feel very overwhelmed. Technology is overwhelming. This was an interesting quote from one of our customers. Her name is Becky, and she said, "Technology is overwhelming. There are new devices and new programs that my kids use almost every week. I can't keep up. I'm not an IT geek. I don't have a computer science degree. My parents taught me how to cook and clean, care for others, but didn't prepare me for dealing with the Internet." And I think that's something that we kind of all deal with a little bit. Obviously, most of us that are old enough to be parents or guardians maybe didn't grow up with our parents having to control or monitor our Internet use. It was something that was a little bit foreign to them, and so this is new for all of us. Obviously, the topic today is covering what it is that kids hide. And, you know, a lot of times people say, well, do kids really hide anything? And I thought this was an interesting picture. Obviously, it looks like a tree in the woods, but if you look really close, you can notice there's an owl sitting right in front of that tree. And a lot of times the Internet activity, what our kids do online, it's something that's kind of right in front of us, but it's maybe not necessarily at the forefront of our minds. And so I want to bring those things to the forefront of our minds, not because I would think our kids are deceitful, but because it's something that we need to be aware of. An interesting statistic from the LA Times, more than 70% of teens surveyed said that they had some type of tricks for deceiving their parents about what they do online. And I don't necessarily think that our kids are trying to be deceitful or hurtful. It's just something that a lot of kids do, and I think it's kind of a culture. So what I'd like to jump into real quick is what those commonly hidden things are by kids. So if you take a look at this slide, these are the topics that I'm going to cover today. I'm going to cover web surfing habits and activities. I'm going to cover how our kids hide their communications with others, how they hide the social networking accounts that they use, the things that they download and apps they install, how they connect to the Internet, and then also some of the ways our kids are treated online or what others are saying and doing. And our kids obviously hide all these in different ways, and I'll try to cover those topics as I go through the demonstration today. Before I get started in the demonstration, I just want to suggest that outside of the technology and ideas I give you today, you actually decide in your home that you're going to create some rules, or in a work environment, they call it an internet usage policy. But it's kind of a rule set or some guidelines within your home that you want your family to follow. Some interesting statistics: kids spend over 7 hours a day on the internet. And at first, when you hear that number, it sounds really, really ridiculous, to be honest. But when you look at how long our kids are on their cell phones, on their tablets, on their consoles, on any device that's connected to the internet, it's actually very realistic. But the other interesting thing is that about 90% of kids think it's okay for their parents to set some type of rules for their phone use or their internet use. And 83% of kids said that there were no real rules in their home for internet use, for cell phone use, or social media communications, which means a lot of us are just kind of waiting for an issue to occur before we put rules in place or policies within our home. So I'm going to jump into the first one, and the first one obviously is the concept of kids hiding web surfing on the internet. 53% of kids clear their browser history to keep web visits off record, or use what's called incognito or private mode to cover their tracks. So let me tell you what that means. Many of the common browsers that are used in the internet today, Safari, for example, Internet Explorer, Chrome, have what's called a in private or an incognito mode. It's very easy to access. You go over to the little gear in the corner. You'll notice that on the left-hand side, I've selected here to show you how to do it in Internet Explorer. You go down to Safety, and then you can choose in private browsing, and you do something very similar in Chrome. The reason why people do this is that when you browse in this mode, none of the internet traffic that you generate is logged in the history. So if you're a parent that goes in and looks at the internet history and you want to know where your family's been going, none of that traffic is logged in a history. Additionally, if you have a parental control application installed that doesn't look at the actual content, it just looks at the names of the sites, a lot of times these will fly right through as well. And I'll go into that in more detail a little bit later. But this is a real common way that kids just surf the web without anyone knowing where they're going, because it doesn't require any changes on the computer. You just 3 clicks and you're incognito mode and going wherever you'd like on the internet. So this is one of the first ways that kids hide their web surfing. Another real common way is that kids go to sites that are seemingly innocent or don't have any inappropriate content, because you can actually find both inappropriate and appropriate content on these types of websites. So here I've put some examples up. I'm not saying these websites are bad. There's great information on Wikipedia, but because these websites are mixed content, they contain user-generated content or just enormous amounts, our kids are able to get to content that maybe we don't want them to access or be exposed to through these type of sites. Common ones are image searches on things like Bing and Google. Obviously, if you do an image search for any general topic, you're going to get a whole bunch of thumbnails back, but oftentimes that will be mixed with inappropriate images. Things like Amazon, you can do a search in Amazon and find inappropriate images for videos or books that are for sale. And Wikipedia is actually one of the largest culprits for having inappropriate content, because anything can be posted. So this is just something you need to be aware of, and I'll give you some tips on how to safeguard against this in just a minute. The other ones that kids use to bypass or hide their web surfing habits are things like proxy servers and anonymizers. And this is starting to get a little bit technical, but basically the concept is you can surf through another person's computer or through another website, and all of your internet traffic is logged or recorded as if it was just going to one site. So for example, here on the left-hand side, Texas Proxy. You can go to this website. From there, anything you type in doesn't actually get typed in your browser bar or your address bar in your browser, but it gets typed into the Texas proxy site. The site then retrieves the content and shows it on your screen, but your computer doesn't really have any recollection or history of you going to these other sites because it's all going through the Texas proxy site. There's variations of how kids use these tools. These types of websites are very easy to access. They can install software on a computer or a device that will encrypt the data. UltraSurf is one of those examples. And once that's done, then there's no logging or history of where they're actually going on the Internet. Along with that, real common tools are things like history erasers, which will allow your kids to delete any history or anywhere they've gone on the Internet so that you can't go back and look at it. Most of these tools are free. They're easy to install. Any average 14-year-old's aware of these type of websites and this type of software. So let me give you some suggestions on things you can do to help keep your family safe and get an idea of what your kids are doing on the Internet. The first one's really simple. Never rely on the Internet history as a real report or a tracking method. I frequently talk with parents and say, well, we look at the Internet history every night and we want to know where our kids are going. And there's several reasons why that's not accurate. Well, one, it's easy for your kids to erase it or to reset it. Also, it's not truly representative of where your kids are going on the Internet because of the modes that I just showed you. So first of all, don't ever rely on that as a reporting tool. Secondly, get a parental control app that actually tracks where your kids are going on the Internet. And when I say tracks where they go, you want specifics on not just the name of a domain, but you actually want to know which websites they're accessing. Because if there's inappropriate content, it could be found, like I showed you before, on websites that are usually safe or benign. Along with that, you want to make sure that your parental control application is contextual. So I started on this a little bit ago when I spoke about incognito mode, but contextual means that it looks at the content on the web page, not just the name of a site. So content filtering or parental control applications kind of have two methods. One method is designed to look at a list of websites and say these websites are inappropriate or have certain types of content, and then I block them. The problem with that is that the Internet's changing every single day. So if you used a parental control app that does contextual filtering, for example, like Nanny, then it can detect, hey, this is inappropriate content, and it can block it in real time. And that's really what you want to do to keep your family safe. And it also allows you to get a clear view of where your kids are going on the Internet. Last part of parental controls, make sure that you review the reports. There are a lot of people who put the effort into put these controls or protection on computers, but if you're not going back and reviewing the reports, you obviously don't have any kind of an idea of what your family's doing on the Internet. The third one that I want to cover is the concept of administrators. And this could be a whole webinar topic on its own, but basically computers, Macs and Windows specifically, have account types. An account type is basically permissions that you have on that computer. And when you create an account for one of your children, it gives you the option to create a standard user or an administrator user. The benefit by having an administrator user is they can change settings on the computer, they can install software, they can make changes. But the downside is that they can make changes. So that means that they can potentially disable software. They can use hacks or techniques to disable parental controls. You can hide your tracks much easier. So granting someone administrative rights on a computer is typically a bad idea unless there's a really good reason that you need to have those administrative rights. A good suggestion for your homes might be consider keeping the administrator password something that just mom and dad have, and that when you need it, you go type it in. This won't limit your kids using the Internet. It won't limit them being able to do homework, but it does eliminate the threat of them disabling or removing software that maybe you don't want them to remove from the computer. And the last one, this is what we talked about at the beginning, but have some kind of a family usage policy. If you're going to monitor your kids' devices, it's a good idea to have a policy in place before, so you can say, hey, our family doesn't go to these type of websites, or our family only goes to uses so much amount of Internet a day. There's lots of options, obviously, and I'm not going to give you any kind of set guidelines, but having a policy obviously gives you something to stand on when you start monitoring and reviewing things with your kids. So the next one I wanted to cover is the concept that kids often hide their communications with other people. And this is really becoming more and more frequent. Most of us are familiar with the concept of texting or instant messaging, but the world has really migrated, and now we use different types of applications for these communications that are maybe not as well known to a lot of parents. So here on this screen, these are some of the common apps that our kids are using to communicate with. So you'll notice that most of the time it's not text messaging. That's not even on the list here. But they're using these apps in the same way that you would use text messaging. I actually read an article yesterday about WhatsApp, and they had a company celebration because their company recorded that their application sent and received 43 billion messages last month. So these apps are very popular. They're being used all the time. The problem with these apps is not the communication. It's that it's hard for us as parents to track who they're communicating with or what kind of communication is occurring. There's been a lot of buzz in the news by Snapchat. Snapchat allows you to send and receive text messages and pictures, but the catch is those pictures are typically viewed for a few seconds and then they're deleted. The application actually removes them automatically. And the reason why that's dangerous is that kids feel like they can send a message and no one will record it. There's no history, but it also makes them much more liberal on what they're willing to send, and then people start sending inappropriate messages. And these are obviously common apps, but there's hundreds of these types of apps that are being used. Also, kids typically will hide who they're communicating with so that they're maybe listed in their WhatsApp application, but they're not listed on their cell phone as one of their contacts. So you just need to be aware of these apps. The other issue to be aware of, as far as the communications that our kids are hiding, is the concept of sexting. So sexting is actually becoming a very huge part of our culture. And what sexting is sending inappropriate or explicit messages back and forth between cell phones or mobile devices. It's actually, because children are often involved, it's actually considered a felony in some places, and it could be considered child pornography if minors are involved. But this is how prevalent it is. 1 in 3 kids say that they've sent or received a sexually explicit text message. 46% of kids say that between 11 and 17 say that a friend has received a sexual picture, and the interesting one is that 83% of kids say they feel pressured to participate in this. So even if you have a kid who you feel like is responsible, maybe grown up a little bit more, and you're not concerned about them, know that there is pressure from outside sources to participate in this type of thing. So let me give you some tips on how to get an idea of what communications are being hidden, and also kind of do a little bit of monitoring. So the first one is, I would strongly suggest reviewing the apps that your kids are using. That involves taking a look at their cell phone or their tablet or their PC and seeing which apps are actually installed. This requires time and effort on your part, but if you assume that you're monitoring your kids' text messages and they're using a different application for their communication, then now you're kind of out of the loop. So be aware of those apps. Consider using texting applications that have monitoring tools embedded in them instead of the ones that are maybe included on your phone. One that I wanted to suggest is there's an application called HandSent. And HandSent is basically a texting replacement for Android devices, but it allows you to actually log all the text messages on a remote website. So you could go back and review them with your kids, even if it's something that they decide to delete. But know what those applications are, and maybe talk with your family about which ones you're going to use. Instead of it just being a free-for-all of, hey, we have a new texting app today, decide as a family which ones you want to use. And that goes back to that policy. Settle on the apps you want to use. Know about new apps before your family's installing them, and then monitor with whom your kids are communicating. So you're really going to want to talk to your kids about who they talk with and what kind of messages are appropriate. And the last one I wanted to talk about here on the communication side of things is the concept of installing some kind of an application monitor. So in mobile devices, for example, Nanny for Android, you can actually block specific applications or all the apps on a mobile device so that you can approve apps before they're allowed. And this is a great way to work with your family because once you get it installed and running, you can see what apps your kids have on their phone. And then if you feel an app's inappropriate or you don't know what that app is, you can actually do the research and approve it before your kids start using the application. So the next one I kind of wanted to cover, and I talked about this just briefly, is the concept of social networks. So our kids obviously hide their social networks more than we actually know. In the case of Facebook, for example, in August of 2012, there was a study, and they found that 83 million Facebook accounts were fake, and about 9% of all the Facebook accounts. And that number has actually grown because the number of Facebook accounts has grown. But there was a study in Colorado where they got a bunch of high school kids together and asked them about their Facebook accounts, and that they found out that 3 out of 5 of the kids had more than one Facebook account. And so the question was, well, why would you want more than one Facebook account? Isn't it hard for people to find you? How do your friends know who to talk to? And what it came down to is these kids admitted that they would typically establish one account to front for mom and dad, and the other account was the one that they would commonly use to communicate with their friends. So in my case, I would have the Clayton account and then the Clayton O account. And maybe I would friend my mom and dad in the Clayton O account so they felt like they were involved, but the Clayton account is the one where I use to communicate with my friends. You obviously want to be aware that kids are very frequently creating more than one account on these social media networks. Also, you need to be aware that a lot of times it is not just Facebook. I think we feel like we kind of have a grasp on what Facebook is. Most of us understand what the technology is, but our kids are flocking to other social networks. This is just a graph from 2012 to 2013, and it shows the migration of users, specifically teens, from Facebook to other social media networks. And there's a lot of these networks. These networks are growing all the time, and our kids are moving to these networks and not necessarily abandoning Facebook, but they are starting to use these just as much. So what can you do? Well, some common suggestions that are maybe not on the technology side of things are follow and friend your kids on these networks. If your kids are on Facebook, friend them and follow them. If they're on Twitter, same thing. But along with that, check their pages. Take a look at what's on their wall. The reason why you would do that, one, is because you kind of want to get an idea of how they're communicating. But at the same time, if they have a wall that's just dead, that nothing changes, and you know your kids are spending hours a day on Facebook, it's likely that you're the guy that's friended your kids, but your kids aren't using that account. So that's a good tip or indicator of maybe your kid has more than one account. Another way to possibly check that is just to send them a message via the social media network. A psychologist that I heard talking about this same issue suggested that if you know your kids are on Facebook and you send them a message and they reply a week and a half later, it's very likely they're using a different Facebook account. So that's just a suggestion. The other thing you could do is obviously take a look at their friends. Are these friends that you know? Is it just a list of people that you've never heard of before? There's two things that would set off an alarm. One, if their friend list is a bunch of people that you've never heard of, because one, that could potentially be an issue of who they communicate with, but also it could indicate that these maybe aren't real people. A real great tool for monitoring your kids on social media accounts is what's called a social media profile monitor. We have one that's included with the NetNanny family pack called NetNanny Social. It allows you to monitor your kids' profiles, if they make a change, if they friend someone, what they post online, what kind of pictures. But these are great tools for monitoring your kids' profiles. These are important, obviously, because if you have a 13-year-old that's on a social media network and they're friending 30-year-olds, you might want to be aware of that. And so these monitoring tools are great for alerting you and giving you a clear view of what's going on. Top 10 Reviews has a lot of good information about these utilities. I mentioned Nanny Social. It's a great tool, but they can actually do a comparison and tell you which tool might be best for your family. And then again, back to the last concept, create a family usage policy. Make sure that your family knows what's expected of them and that it's something you openly talk about. Teach your kids correct usage. So the next one I wanted to jump into was the concept of kids are actually hiding what they download and the applications that are installed on their device. So I don't know how many of you have ever seen an application like this, but to kind of give you an overview, these applications are designed to house other apps or files within them, but kind of hide them from the user. So for example, the Android App Manager or the App Hide. Basically, you install it, and then from within those apps, you can actually install new apps, but those apps are hidden from anyone who picks up the phone. So in my case, if I had the Android App Manager on my phone, when I tap on it, it would typically prompt me for a password. If I don't have the password, I can't see what's inside. But if I enter the password, now I get a list of apps that are otherwise hidden on the phone or on the device. And these are frequent apps, the frequent technologies that our kids are using to hide what's on their mobile devices. Along with that, there are apps that just have common names. So, for example, My Photo Album or Spy Calculator. These are some common ones that I found on iPhones. Both of these look relatively mild when you look at the name, but when you open them up, it's a way you can hide specific photos, or you could download inappropriate content, and it's all hid within that app. So a lot of the ways that our kids are hiding this is just the whole out of sight, out of mind. So it goes back to understanding what the apps are, knowing what apps are used for, and then at the same time, our kids will often just hide it from the main screen. All of us have seen the option in an Android or an iOS device where you can create folders and put them on a second screen that you have to scroll over to see. And so those are just common methods that our kids are using to kind of keep it out of our sight, so we don't necessarily know what it is. So let me give you some solutions and some suggestions on monitoring what our kids download and the apps that they're using. And I've gone over this a few times, but review the apps that are installed on the device and know what they are. To keep our kids safe, to have an idea of what kind of things they're doing online, to be able to monitor them, we really need to have an idea of what the apps they have are being used for. If we allow our kids to just have a free-for-all, install anything off of iTunes, or download and run anything, then we don't necessarily have a good grasp on what they're using or who they're communicating with, and that makes it hard for us to keep them safe. Consider stopping the installation of new apps without your approval. iOS actually has this built in. If you have an iPhone or an iPad or an iPod, you can go into restrictions and you can stop the installation of new apps until you approve them or put in a password. Android has something similar, but it requires an installation of an app manager. There's an app manager embedded in the Nanny for Android solution that works just as I described earlier. You can block apps until they're approved, and you can actually see those apps through a website, so you don't have to get the phone back and review what apps are on your kids' devices. One of the other really good suggestions is, if you don't know what an app is, take the time to look it up before you let your family start using it. The reason why is Snapchat, for example. My daughter came and said she wanted to use Snapchat, and it seemed like a great solution, and she told me all her friends used it. And then I did one Google search and found out typically I found out some of the common uses for Snapchat, and read some stories in the news, and when I found out that was typically used for sending photos back and forth, we had a conversation about, do you really need this? Is it really important? And when it came down to it, it wasn't. So it's good practice to know what it is. I'm not telling you to keep your kids away from Snapchat, but you should obviously know what it is when you start letting them use it. So the next one I wanted to jump into is the concept of how our kids connect to the internet. Most of us have been around long enough with the concept of the internet used to be this modem that was connected to a computer in the corner, and we knew that that's how we were getting connected. And the internet is obviously migrated and evolved. So now it is obviously available via Wi-Fi. It's available 4G and 3G connections. A lot of us go through the effort of maybe trying to put parental controls on a home router or buy a home router that has some tracking features embedded in it. And the issue with that, obviously, is that the Internet's now available basically anywhere. Our kids can have access via their phone. Most of them have friends who have phones who have mobile hotspots embedded in them. So although they may have an iPod that doesn't have access to the Internet, their friends have a phone that does, and they can share that connection very easily. So it's a good thing to be aware of the Internet and kind of keep in mind that your kids are not just connecting in your home or over your Wi-Fi connection anymore. It's really available anywhere. So there's not a lot of solutions to stop your kids from connecting to the Internet, and I'm not going to try to put in suggestions for that, but what I do have are some suggestions on how to keep your kids safe and monitored regardless of the way they connect to the Internet. So the first one is the concept of protecting individual devices. If you want to protect your kids online on their mobile phone, you really need to protect their mobile phone, not your home Wi-Fi connection. If you're interested in protecting your kid's laptop, you really need to put some solutions in place on the laptop, because if you're assuming that they're protected on your home Wi-Fi connection because you've put some restrictions in place, they can very easily, like I said, use a friend's Wi-Fi connection. They could use the neighbors. They can take it to school. They can tether it to their cell phone. There's many, many ways you can connect to the Internet. And lastly, if it becomes an issue, if you don't feel like you have a good grasp, you can actually stop devices, mobile devices and notebooks, from connecting to networks that you don't approve. So, for example, in Android, you can actually install Nanny. You can stop access to the settings, which would make it so that a phone can't just connect to a new Wi-Fi connection because that portion of the phone is blocked. With the admin rights that I talked about earlier on a PC or a Mac, you can actually stop your kids from connecting to a new Wi-Fi connection if that's something that you want to do. And it takes a little bit of management, but if it's a concern and you feel like you've tried everything else and it's not working, that's a great option. So I want to jump into some other things that our kids hide. They hide the way that they're treated and what others are saying online. So I kind of just wanted to cover a little bit of this topic. Over half of preteens and teens have been bullied online, and over half of preteens and teens have engaged in bullying. Now, I don't think that means everyone is participating in bullying. I think there's a lot of bleed over of kids who are bullied tend to participate in bullying as well. But we need to be aware that bullying is very prevalent on the Internet. Some other interesting data that goes along with that is that fewer than 1 in 5 cyberbullying incidents are actually reported to law enforcement. And that number is actually very high because less than 10% of kids even tell their parents that they've been bullied online. And there's some reasons behind this, but the biggest reason that we could kind of identify as we've talked to kids is that they feel that they'll lose their access by telling mom and dad. So if I'm being bullied on Facebook and I go and tell my parents, a lot of times kids are concerned that the first thing mom and dad are going to do is take away their access to Facebook. A lot of times kids are also concerned that their parents won't understand, and sometimes kids just don't know what is going on is actually wrong. So cyberbullying is a very real issue. It's something that we need to be aware of. Some ideas and tools that you can use with your family to help keep them safe and get an idea of what's going on are social media monitoring tools, the same tools that I mentioned before, where you can actually monitor profiles and what's being said. This isn't spying on your kids. It's good parenting. It's getting an idea of how they're treating others and how they're being treated, so you can actually address those issues. But along with those technology tools, ask questions and address the issues directly. Talk to your kids about, hey, how do other people talk to you online? How do you feel about that? someone insulting you or making comments that are derogatory? How does that make you feel? A lot of times as parents, we're a little bit out of the loop as far as what our kids are saying or how they're being treated online. And the only way to really find that out is both monitoring and talking with our kids about it. When you find out that if something has occurred, find out a history and the backstories. Find out if it's been occurring for years, if it's been something that happened last week, if it's been occurring with other kids as well. Kind of get some feel for the events that are occurring and what's being said. And then find out how your kids feel about it. I was sent to a conference where I had the opportunity to meet a woman who had a very tragic story that her daughter was cyberbullied online and eventually ended up committing suicide. And her comments were very interesting because she said, well, I always assumed that she was safe just because she was upstairs in her room. And what a lot of times we don't recognize as parents is that how real those feelings are for our kids based on what other people are saying online. And so we really need to find out how they feel. The next two things are obviously create some kind of a plan of action. Do something to remove your kids from the situation or help them cope with the situation. Don't wait for someone else's parents to step in and stop their kid from being a bully. If your kid's having a hard time or in a situation where they're being affected by it, you need to be the first to take action. And then the last one is the concept of get some help. Talk to professionals if it's affecting your children. Contact law enforcement. Most schools now have cyberbullying policies where they want to know about what's going on online. There are a lot of resources and people that want to help, but they just need to be made aware of what's going on. So let me kind of give you a wrap-up of some of the suggestions I've made today. And a lot of these are very common sense suggestions, but I think they're good ways for us to keep our family safe, and they're just things to kind of think about. So the first one, have a content filtering parental control application that logs where your kids go. Along with that, take a look at the reports. So don't just have it, but use it. See where your kids are going, monitor it, talk to them about it. Look at reports together. Number two, regularly review the installed apps. And this is mostly for mobile devices, but it could be part of your PC and your Mac as well. Know what applications are installed, know why they're installed and what they do. I read an interesting story last month about a lawsuit of a family that was sued by the record label companies because they'd been downloading music illegally. And when it came down to it, no one in the family really even knew that the application was running. Somebody had installed it to download one file, and then they didn't even know it was running. And for months, it had been running in the background, using up their internet and downloading illegal music. So knowing what's on your computer is a very important step. Next, never give admin rights to your family unless they really need it. Admin rights are reserved for managing the computer. That's the way that Microsoft and Mac have actually designed their operating systems. And a lot of times, just for convenience, we just make people an admin. Have a family usage policy that everyone understands. We talked about that earlier. Be active in monitoring use and installed apps on the computer. Monitor social media and web usage. So you need to be aware that obviously our kids maybe spend a lot of time online, but it's not just surfing. It's communicating with others in these social media networks. Last one here, don't assume your home router is the only way they're getting online. Obviously, a good solution for protecting your family could be embedded in a home router, but don't assume that that's protecting them all the time. The last ones I wanted to cover, the concept of physically reviewing the device that your family has. That means you have to occasionally sit down in front of the computer and see what's installed. Occasionally, ask your 15-year-old to take a look at his or her cell phone. Occasionally, take a look at what's installed on the iPad and know what those applications are. And that goes into the know what the apps are and what they're used for. The last one, these are a little bit more policy-driven and less technology, but ask about the who and the why. Most of us grew up with the concept of when we would talk on the phone for hours, our mom or dad would come knock on the door and say, "Who are you talking to?" we need to have that same type of parenting skill with our kids online. Who are you talking to and why? And who is this guy or who is this girl and how do you know them? And then the last one is the concept of taking bullying seriously. So report it, listen to your kids, and take action. So those are just kind of some of the short suggestions that we had at the end, kind of to summarize it. But I kind of wanted to jump back into my analogy at the beginning of sometimes these things are right in front of us. So a lot of these solutions that I've shown you today are not necessarily new, but they're right in front of us and they're easy to use. They're not going to solve every issue. If we have an ambitious teenager that is trying hard to get around parental controls or trying to manipulate us or be deceitful in what they're doing, we're never going to be able to catch it all. But a lot of the things that we have today help make your life easier and help open up that communication line between you and your family. So just like the picture I'm showing you right now, if you look at it as a broad picture, it just looks like the forest. But when you get a little bit closer, you can see that there's a deer standing there looking at you. And that's how it is with these solutions. If you just take the time to look a little bit closer, if you just take the time to monitor your kids a little bit and talk to them about what they're doing online, put some solutions in place, buy a parental control app, implement things like content filtering, social media controls. It'll make your life a lot easier and it'll avoid all those future potential issues that could occur and those threats that we all hear about as parents. So I just wanted to mention a couple resources that we offer here at Content Watch that are free. Our webinars are always recorded. They're available online. If you go to netnanny.com, Learn Center webinars, you can see our past webinars that have been recorded. You can get information about upcoming webinars, what topics we're going to cover, and they're always available. Also, we have many printed materials that are available. Internet Safety for Parents, 5 tips for talking to your teenagers about pornography if it's an issue. And these are, again, free on our website, and they're always available. So I want to encourage you to take a look at these resources. I hope that the information that we've shown you today is valid and useful. I have fielded a couple questions that I'll go ahead and answer, but I did want to make you aware of our promotion going on right now. So if you would like to be entered to win a free copy of Net Nanny Social, that's the tool that I mentioned earlier for monitoring your kids online for their social media accounts, go ahead and send an email to marketing@contentwatch.com. We'll put you into a drawing, and we're going to randomly select 10 listeners that came to today's webinar to give them a free copy. So please go ahead and send an email to that email right now if you'd like. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and try to answer a couple of the questions that have been asked. One of them here is, my kids only communicate via Snapchat. What can I do to monitor their messages? So that's a little bit of a tough one. Snapchat embedded in the application will instantly delete any of your messages after you've viewed them. There's a couple applications that you can look for. There's one for iOS, and to be honest, I don't even know the name, that will actually capture a Snapchat when it appears on the screen, and then record it so that you can kind of go back and look at it as a log. But if your kids are dead set on using Snapchat, there's not really any kind of a history or a technology that you can use that's going to effectively protect them. It's basically either you allow it or you do not. So a lot of that's going to need to be covered with your family of what's acceptable use. What should you do if someone sends you something inappropriate? Those are some kind of things that you want to cover with your family. There's another one here that says, what can I do about my kids searching for inappropriate images? That's a great question. So let me give you some examples. In the case of Google, if you go to Google Images, you can type in any name you'd like, and it will do a search, and it will return a web page with thumbnails of images. It's a great tool if you're doing research for school or you're trying to fill in a report, but it also catalogs all the images that it can find on the internet, so it's typically mixed in with inappropriate images. Google and Bing, Yahoo, most of the major search engines have this technology, but they also have a technology called Safe Search that you can turn on. Safe Search is one of the options in the search engine itself, and by turning it on, it will typically filter out many of the websites that host inappropriate images from your image searches. So let me give you a quick example. Let's say I go to Google Images and I type in, I don't know, Jessica for an image search. If I don't have Google Safe Search enabled, basically what Google will do is return a page with a whole bunch of thumbnails that are called jessica.jpg. Well, you could see how potentially there could be something inappropriate if there was an inappropriate image with that name tied to it. If you turn on Safe Search, and you can do this by going into Google Settings or Google Preferences, and then you just turn on Safe Search. It will then filter many of those images out. Along with that, you're going to want to have some kind of a parental control application installed, because obviously that's not 100% effective for all images, but it's a good start. And having a contextual parental control included with that is a great solution for protecting from all of those. I have one more here. Well, I have a couple more. I'll try to get to them. One here says, what about my kids going to encrypted SSL websites? What can I do? So that's a great question. So without getting too technical with you, basically there's two types of ways websites are transferred to your computer. One is over what's called HTTP, and the other is called HTTPS. And the S means secure, and secure means that it's encrypted. The catch with that is a lot of content filtering solutions don't look at encrypted traffic because it's encrypted. So there's a couple things you can do to help with that. One, a contextual-based content filter, for example, like Nanny, actually does look at secure traffic as well, which means if your kids are going to secure websites or secure proxies, Nanny would still filter and block that content. But you need to be aware that if they're going to HTTPS sites, something that is doing a list or trying to do it in your home router is probably not going to be effective, because that encryption over the internet between that computer or device and the internet is going to be unreadable. So my suggestion would be install a content filter that is contextual based, something like NetNanny. Obviously, I suggest NetNanny because I think it's the best. But there are others that attempt to do the same type of thing. I'm confident in what NetNanny does, but also be aware that it's not something that you can implement on a home router solution. It needs to be protected on the individual device. It says here, my kids delete internet history every time they get off the computer. They say it keeps our computer faster. How can I know where they're going on the internet? Will this still show up in reporting for NetNanny? Yes, it will. So NetNanny does not report based on what shows up in internet history. It doesn't report on what Internet Explorer or Firefox or Chrome or any of the browsers are actually logging. It reports on the websites that are accessed. So this is a great way for, that's one of the great benefits of having a parental control application. One more here. Is there a way I can see what they're doing and change settings without having to get their computer or phone back? Yes, you can. Absolutely. So in the case of NetNanny, all the monitoring, all of the reporting is hosted on a website out on the Internet cloud, which means you can sit at your desk and log into admin.netnanny.com and see where your kids are going on the Internet. You can make changes, see the apps that they're using, and not have to get the actual device back if you need to make a change. You can do it right there from that website. So that's definitely designed to make your life easier. I have one more here. Is there any way to make sure that my kids get the same settings on a cell phone as they do on their computer? Again, I got some great news for you. So NetNanny is now designed to be cross-platform. So if you have an Android tablet and a Mac PC and a Mac and a PC, and you want to cover them all and you want them to have the same settings, NetNanny is a great solution for that, because you can actually share policies across multiple devices. So it makes it easy for your family. One more here. Is there any way to limit how much time our kids are spending online? So On the devices that you choose to monitor or to protect, you can. For example, Nanny has time controls and time allowances embedded in it. On other devices that you do not, maybe, I don't know, your Xbox 360 in the basement, if you're concerned about how much time your kids are spending online on that device, there's a few options. Microsoft or Sony, for example, for the PlayStation, does have some parental control options. You can look at adding authentication or options to your router that block access without a password or permission. But it's definitely a lot more work to monitor and limit how much time kids spend online for devices that don't have anything installed to manage them. A policy that I've kind of tried to set with some of my kids is if we don't feel like we could manage or control the way that you use the device or monitor it, then you have to look for another device. And I'm not saying that needs to be the policy in your homes, but it's a good suggestion. There's so many different devices that are available anyways. It's unfortunate to run out and buy one that you don't feel like you can really manage when there's so many other options. So I wanted to thank everyone for coming today. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all the questions. There are several other questions here that we haven't got a chance to answer, and I'll try to include those answers in a FAQ doc that will be included on our website along with the reposting of this webinar. So we'll try, like I said, we'll try to get that on our website shortly. Please come check netnanny.com, go to the webinar section, look and see what other webinars we have, and like I said, within about a week, this one should be reposted as well, so you could share it with friends. We'll do another one of these probably about the same time next month. There'll be a different presenter and obviously a different topic, so look to our website or look in your email for information about what we're going to talk about next month. And I'm going to go ahead and close the call, and thanks everyone for your time and for attending. Thanks a lot.